and started it before I was ready. But anyway, I'm going to say this first. So, anybody who's watching the replay, you hear me say this before you decide to click off of the video. The title of this video was Aren't You Embarrassed? I made this video to talk about my experience being so public and so vocal about having been in a cult. And people will ask, are you not embarrassed? Is it not embarrassing? And to that, I say, most of the time, I am not, because why should I be embarrassed when the shame lies with them? The shame should lie with them. Should I be embarrassed for being trusting and wanting to have a good relationship with God and believing things that they told me for months and then years on end? Or should the shame go to the people who lied and manipulated and gaslit and beat people over the head and publicly shamed and embarrassed them and threatened them and controlled them psychologically? That's embarrassing. That's shameful. Um, and that could go with anything. Any content that you are making, speaking out against, whether it is a cult or a toxic environment, a toxic or abusive partner, parent, whatever, there is this tendency to feel like we should be inward and quiet and not so loud about it. But again, the shame should lie with them. And that's not an original thought of mine. I heard someone say it. I don't know if it was Brene Brown. I don't know if it was Dr. Ramani, who I love. But yeah, so don't, I just held on to it because I really, really like it. But that's not an original quote. But it's something that really stood out to me. Like, yeah, why should I be embarrassed when they are the ones doing this and continuing to do it and then doubling down? That being said, the answer is a little more nuanced than that. Yes and no. It can be awkward. It can be uncomfortable, because while cults are becoming more common knowledge and people are becoming more and more aware that cults have many faces, it doesn't just look like Waco. It doesn't just look like Nexium. It doesn't just look like, whatever. It can be an MLM. It can be, um, some people say this about CrossFit. I don't know. I never went that deeply into CrossFit. Hi, Spicy. Hi, Beerver. Um, some people, say that about all these things. We're all aware that anybody can fall into a cult. So Spicy, what I'm talking about is because a lot of my content talks about my time in a cult. And so something that I'll get from people sometimes is like, aren't you embarrassed? Or why are you telling all of your business online? And so I just wanted to address that. And so, but it can be awkward because cult is this super stigmatized word, and you just think of people who are all wearing matching clothes and drinking Kool-Aid and reciting chants. And it's so funny because I'm like, oh well, we were all dressed in a similar fashion. It wasn't matching, but just the modesty standard. It was so awkward. And we all did have communion every week, and that may or may not be a red flag. We definitely had a unified lingo that we went by, and yeah, slang. Where so it was very culty. It was very culty. It was very strange. I can look back at some old photos of myself with friends or other people, especially the women in the cult. And it's like, ugh. Geez, yeah. Or I have some friends who came out with me a couple of times over the years, and they wouldn't come back, and they're like, it's just an interesting vibe, just a weird vibe. And I'm like, yeah, it was probably culty AF, and I just didn't realize it. And so that it could just be awkward. Like, yeah, that was me, like the type of things you see on documentaries and news stories, like 2020, Dateline, whatever. It's like, I was really up in there for years. Thanks for the subscription, Tarika. Welcome, welcome. I was really in there for years, and that can feel embarrassing. It can feel awkward. And something that people will say often is you have to give your former self grace. They were doing the best they can. And, yada, yada, yada. I struggled with that for years. It was so hard because just looking at the facts, I just felt like this is so dumb. You were so dumb. How did you do that? But I was able to work through and just lots of meditation, conversation, journaling, energy work, and things like that. And thank goodness I'm able to forgive my former self, but it's just hard. Or, if it comes up and it's like, you were in a cult, and it's like, about that. Let's see, what else? It can be interesting thinking that, like, okay, so that's kind of what I'm known for. Like, if somebody Googles me, if you Google my name, you might see that, I've been on the podcast with Roberta Blevins, who was on LuLaRoe. She has a Life After MLM podcast. Me and Asha did that one, or the Indoctrination podcast, or a little bit culty. Like, if you type my name in, that's what you'll see. And that is my legacy. But on the flip side, my legacy is not just, oh, poor me, I was a victim of a cult. It's like, but I'm speaking out against it. So let's see. Never forgive your former self. He is the reason your life sucks. That's what Shadow says. And Shadow is aptly named, appropriately named. And that is why I had such a hard time forgiving myself. And me and a close friend have actually been talking about that this week, as she's having a hard time with some permanent fixtures in her life now because of decisions she made when she was in the cult. It is very hard. It is very nuanced, and some days are better than others, and some days it just feels like this dark hole that you can't escape, and you're so mad at yourself. I don't know if anyone's ever seen the show Once Upon a Time. Oh, I loved that show. And I remember when I came out of the cult and I started getting back in touch more and more with my true self and my true personality, I felt like I was one of the characters in Storybrooke that was placed under a spell. And I completely forgot about my old life. I forgot about my old passions. I forgot about my dreams, my aspirations, my core values, what I wanted in a friendship, what I wanted in a romantic partnership. And I was just put under this spell, under this daze. I was brainwashed by this cult. And then when I came out of it, it's like I remembered everything I wanted out of life before, but I looked around and was like, oh my God, I got married. Oh my God, I had a kid. Oh my God, I built a career. Like, oh my God, I signed this contract or that contract and I can't get out of it. And so it is hard. It is really hard to do. But I'm grateful that I've been able to do it and that I've had people in my life to be able to help me move forward. But like I said, it can be embarrassing knowing that if somebody looks me up, this is mainly what they will find. Also, in certain, this isn't necessarily like why I get embarrassed about making the content and putting myself out there like that, but it can be an embarrassing side effect of just having been in the cult, which is that I forget that sometimes I'm really just immature, inexperienced, uninformed about certain aspects of life, whether it is finances, responsibilities, how romantic relationships work, how building a new friendship in the real world works, because your friends were ready-made. Your friends were given to you. You were told that you had to be friends with the people in this cult. And they would say like, oh, everybody doesn't have to be your best friend, but they would also make you feel bad if your best friend was not in the group. Because what do you guys really have so much in common? Can you really trust them? Is their judgment godly? Is their judgment aligned? Do they have in mind the things above? How could you really be close? And so they're not telling you couldn't have any friends outside the group, but your best friends, your closest friends better be in this group. And so whether you really like them or not, you don't know because you don't have a choice. And then a lot of times, even within, you're not allowed to hang out with your best friends in the cult because they split you up into different small groups so you don't idolize each other. You're not sin buddies and you can serve in different places, and then you just have to make do with hanging out with those people in your small group. within the cult. And so anyway, being out of the cult and navigating certain dynamics, whether in the workplace or again trying to figure out dating or whatever, you're just like, oh, I don't know about this. Oh yeah, finances, especially if you were a married woman, and this isn't for all married women, but majority, like the tiniest nuances, you just felt so blessed to be able to say, "Oh, my husband takes care of that. Oh, I don't know about that. Oh, it's fine. He does that." And it's all well and good while you don't have to think about it until one day, if he passes away or if you guys split up, and now you have to figure out and remember, like dig in the recesses of your mind when you last had control over your life and had to take care of these responsibilities, like remembering how to set up a bank account, remembering how to set up electricity bills and like utilities, and buying your own phone, doing your own research on different products or whatever, and feeling like a child or going into the store and having to work with service people and they're asking you all these questions, and it's like, wait, give me a minute. let me let me figure this out. Let me find it. Okay, what does that word mean? Which number is that? Could you literally having to ask people like, can you explain this to me? Like I'm sorry. And like that can be embarrassing. And just having to humble out and say I'm sorry. Like I haven't had to do this in 15 years. Could you please go slower? Or however long. That can be really embarrassing. That's humiliating, especially when in the life that you've built, you feel like a pretty functional, responsible person, only to be reminded in the real world, you don't know much. So, yeah, that can be embarrassing. But on the flip side, to return to what I said at the very start, the shame is on them. And so my biggest crime, my biggest embarrassment was just having been too trusting, for believing what they told me, for believing what they pitched to me, for believing the skewed and limited version of the scriptures that they taught and they preached, and believing that they were actually going to be loving and truthful. And also, I was 18 when I joined. And so my brain was not even fully developed. My frontal lobe, which is in charge of like critical thinking, decision making, executive function, all of that, making sound decisions, it wasn't even all the way developed yet. And it wasn't developed when I got married. So, um, yeah, I can't, I refuse. I refuse. They should be embarrassed. And that's part of the reason why I continue to speak out, because it's embarrassing. Listen to you guys. Listen. That's why I have my little videos. The leaders speak for themselves. Listen to yourself. You sound ridiculous. You look ridiculous. Everybody in the crowd who heard you say that load of crap going, yeah, brother. Go ahead, sis. That's embarrassing. Because especially at the time that I left, there were not so many people speaking out. There were not so many YouTube channels. The only thing I could say is, again, cults get people when they're very vulnerable. They need a family, they need a community, they're searching for something, they need validation, and they're just being preyed upon. But I will show it. I will show it so other people can see. And it's worth it. It's worth it. I have my notes here. It's worth it when I get DMs, when I get comments, when I get emails about how maybe someone was studying the Bible. That's their kind of indoctrination conversion process. But then they came across our videos and they were like, oh my gosh, it's all true. I knew I felt weird, but I just blamed myself. But thank you for the content. I'm leaving and never talking to them again. Or thank you so much. I was able to leave and get my kids out of it. Thank you for speaking out. It's worth it. This was the reason. This was the reason for Asha and I even starting this content. And it's the reason why we're still making it. When we came out with our first video 2 years ago now, we just wanted to cover a couple of topics and be done. But there's just so much more that can be said. And the response has been so tremendous and surprising, I think. And so it's like, well, then we'll keep going. We'll keep going because they deserve to be called out. I love knowing that people feel less alone. I think whether it was like back in the day when I first tried my hand at like becoming a content creator, it was going to be about mental health, anxiety, depression, medication, yada, yada, all the things. Because, and then even grieving my mom when my mom passed away, the struggle sucks. The struggle itself is hard, but for me, the worst part of it is feeling alone. Feeling like you're looking around and nobody's talking about it. Nobody's ever felt this. And I think that culture has changed a little bit online, unless that's just my algorithm, my little echo chamber. But I see so many people who are talking about it on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. Like it's just so much more popular now. But my goal is if I could just be one more creator, one more video, one more YouTube short, one more quote, one more anything that just helps someone feel less alone, more violated, less strange, then I've done my part. I've done my job. It sounds cheesy and cliche, but I really do just go out and make the content that I wish I had, that I wish I could have seen, that would have made me feel better and made me feel less alone. And so that's even why we say the things we say. Like, let's just call it like it is. And also, am I embarrassed? No, I'm happy. I'm healing. I'm free. I'm having a great time. I'm having a great time. If you don't like it, don't subscribe. Don't watch. Go somewhere else. There's so many other things online that you could be doing and engaging in. You could be on Pinterest. You could be on Instagram. You could be on TikTok. You could be making your own videos. You could be listening to an audiobook. You could be learning how to cook a steak. Like you could be learning how to live off the grid, and yet you choose to come here and criticize me and my friends that come on and say, embarrassed. Aren't you embarrassed wasting your time? I'm doing what I want to do. Why don't you? Unless complaining, unless watching and judging me makes you feel better about yourself, then that's fine. Do it. But the great thing is, it doesn't impact my life. I don't know about it, and I don't care. I'm happy. After I finish this little video, I'm going to eat some yummy food and drink a yummy beverage and go do my work that I love. I have a job I love. That is also contributing to the world in other ways, and so I'm happy. And lastly, this little cliche: the people who mind don't matter, and the people who matter don't mind. That's it. The people who mind don't matter. The people who matter don't mind. So I am not saying that everybody needs to go live and public and online with their story. I think everybody does their part just by choosing to live in your truth and your existence. But this is something that I like doing. This is something that I like doing. Am I embarrassed? Yes and no. Sometimes not. Depends on the circumstance. But overall, like, do I regret it? Not at all. Not at all. It actually brings me joy to hear that some churches have said, or some members of churches are like, people keep leaving because of Asha and Nikita's videos. Little me? Really? Because who am I? Who am I? It's really you. I'm not that special. You're just that trifling. You are just that bad that all I had to do was say out loud what you did, and then people were like, you know what? Yeah. I'm out of here. We didn't go on a campaign. We're very inconsistent with our videos, especially the first ones. The quality, the video quality, the audio quality is not anything to write home about, except possibly how bad it is, how poor the quality is. We just literally said out loud what was happening, and people were like, you know what? They're right, and I'm sick of this. Or what? There's a lawsuit? Why didn't they tell us about that? So, I don't know. I don't take much credit. You guys give it, and that's sweet, and that's nice, and it's surreal, and it moves us to tears, both of us, Asha and I. Um, but we just came online and said out loud what so many of you were thinking. I know so many of you were thinking it, because some of the things y'all say in the comments makes me clutch my pearls. And so any way that I can, encourage people to just keep living their truth, that's what I'm going to do. So anyway, I'm going to go get ready for my day. Till next time, stay safe and stay free, because every day is a good day to not be in a cult.